This is Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes, U.S. Army Intelligence, and what I'm about to report represents the most significant escalation in Ukrainian strategic capabilities since the beginning of this conflict. At 0347 hours Moscow time, Ukrainian forces executed a coordinated drone attack penetrating deeper into Russian territory than any previous operation, 800 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Multiple military installations have been confirmed, destroyed, and the implications for this war have fundamentally changed. What we witnessed was not just an attack. It was a demonstration that Ukraine has developed capabilities that completely redefine the nature of this conflict. The operation simultaneously struck 7 critical Russian military complexes: the Saratov aviation plant, responsible for strategic bomber maintenance; the Ryazan oil refinery, a crucial fuel supply hub for military operations; the Engels II strategic bomber base, home to Tu-95 and Tu-160 nuclear-capable aircraft; the Toropets ammunition depot, containing thousands of tons of armaments; the Soltsi Air Base, center of interceptor fighter operations; the Tver Military Communications Center. What makes this operation unprecedented is not just the distance. It's the surgical precision and coordination that demonstrates Ukraine's evolution from a defensive force to a military power capable of projecting force deep into enemy territory. Intelligence sources confirm that Ukrainian forces deployed a swarm of domestically produced drones, likely the new Beaver, Magura, and revolutionary Neptune D-series variants, coordinated with modified commercial drones carrying enhanced payloads. The attack pattern suggests months of detailed reconnaissance, with drones following multiple flight paths to avoid Russian air defense systems that have proven increasingly inadequate against low-flying, distributed targets. Even more alarming, the precise synchronization indicates that Ukraine has developed a sophisticated command and control network capable of managing multiple simultaneous strikes across vast distances, representing a quantum leap in their operational capabilities. The technical achievement here cannot be understated. These are not crude, improvised devices. We're looking at sophisticated unmanned systems with advanced navigation, communication relay capabilities, and precision targeting systems that rival traditional cruise missiles. Ukrainian engineers have essentially created low-cost cruise missiles, using commercial components and indigenous innovation, effectively democratizing long-range strike capabilities. Preliminary technical analyses of recovered debris reveal a surprising integration of Western technology with Ukrainian engineering. The drones demonstrated the ability to navigate complex air defense networks, suggesting both advanced electronic warfare capabilities and detailed intelligence on Russian defensive positions. Inertial navigation systems combined with GPS correction and, more concerningly, terrain-following navigation capabilities allowed these drones to maintain course even under heavy electronic interference. What's particularly concerning for Russian forces is the scalability of this technology. Unlike traditional military hardware that requires extensive manufacturing infrastructure, drone production can be rapidly scaled using readily available components. Ukraine has essentially democratized long-range strike capabilities, turning every engineering workshop into a potential weapons factory. Even more alarming is evidence of mass production. Intelligence sources indicate that Ukraine now possesses the capability to produce between 200 to 300 long-range drones monthly using a decentralized network of small factories and workshops. This distributive approach makes the production system virtually impossible to be completely neutralized by Russian attacks. The success of this operation has exposed critical vulnerabilities in Russia's much-vaunted air defense systems. The S-400 and Pantsir systems, marketed globally as premier defensive platforms, failed catastrophically against a swarm of relatively simple drones. This failure isn't just tactical, it's strategic, undermining Russia's defense export industry and calling into question the effectiveness of similar systems deployed worldwide. Russian air defense doctrine, built around high-altitude, high-speed threats like fighter jets and ballistic missiles, has proven inadequate against low-altitude, slow-moving swarm attacks. The drones exploited gaps between radar coverage zones flying at altitudes and speeds that fall into detection blind spots. This tactical innovation has rendered billions of dollars in Russian air defense infrastructure essentially obsolete overnight. Detailed analyses of the operation reveal impressive tactical sophistication. The drones were launched in staggered waves, with the first groups serving as decoys to activate and locate air defense systems, while subsequent groups followed alternative routes to exploit created gaps. This radar hunting approach demonstrates a deep understanding of Russian defensive system limitations. The psychological impact cannot be ignored. Russian military leadership sold their air defense systems as impenetrable shields protecting the homeland. This operation has shattered that illusion, demonstrating that no target within 800 kilometers of Ukraine's border can be considered safe. The strategic implications extend far beyond this conflict. Every nation relying on Russian air defense technology must now question its effectiveness. Perhaps most alarming is the proximity of these strikes to Russia's nuclear infrastructure. The Engels 2 base houses aircraft capable of carrying nuclear weapons, and the precision of the Ukrainian strike suggests they possess detailed intelligence on Russia's most sensitive military installations. This raises the terrifying possibility that Ukraine now has the capability to target Russian nuclear facilities directly. The Saratov region, where multiple strikes occurred, is home to several nuclear research facilities and storage sites. While there's no indication these were targeted, the demonstration of Ukrainian reach into this region sends an unmistakable message about their evolving capabilities. Russian nuclear doctrine has always assumed that strategic assets would remain beyond enemy reach. This assumption has now been definitively shattered. Intelligence analysts are particularly concerned about the implications for nuclear escalation. If Ukraine can strike deep into Russian territory with conventional weapons, Putin's calculation about nuclear thresholds may shift dramatically. The traditional concept of strategic depth, which has protected Russian homeland installations for decades, no longer applies when dealing with distributed, low-cost drone swarms. Even more concerning is the proximity of the strikes to nuclear material storage facilities. The Balakovo complex, just 200 kilometers from targeted sites, contains significant quantities of fissile material. While not directly threatened, the demonstration that Ukrainian forces can operate in this region with impunity represents a fundamental escalation in the nature of this war. This operation represents the industrialization of asymmetric warfare. Ukraine has demonstrated that a smaller nation can develop indigenous capabilities to strike critical infrastructure deep within a larger adversary's territory, using relatively simple technology and innovative tactics. The implications extend far beyond this conflict. We're witnessing the birth of a new form of warfare that could fundamentally alter global military balance. The targeting of the Saratov aviation plant, Ryazan oil refinery, and ammunition storage facilities demonstrates Ukraine's understanding of systems warfare, striking not just military targets, but the industrial infrastructure that supports military operations. This approach aims to degrade Russia's long-term capability to sustain military operations, rather than simply achieving tactical victories on the battlefield. The economic implications are staggering. Each successful strike forces Russia to divert resources to homeland defense that would otherwise support frontline operations. More critically, it demonstrates to Russian industry that nowhere is safe, potentially leading to the evacuation or hardening of critical facilities at enormous cost. The destruction of the Ryazan refinery alone represents a loss of fuel production capacity, estimated at 180,000 barrels per day, enough to fuel significant military operations. Multiplied across multiple targets, the cumulative impact on Russian logistical capacity will be substantial and long-term. The success of this operation has sent shockwaves through NATO headquarters and international capitals. While publicly maintaining support for Ukraine's right to self-defense, privately, many allies are concerned about escalation dynamics. The demonstration of Ukrainian capability to strike deep into Russian territory fundamentally alters the strategic calculation for all parties involved in this conflict. Intelligence sharing between Ukraine and Western allies has clearly evolved beyond defensive cooperation. The precision and coordination of these strikes suggest access to real-time intelligence that could only come from satellite surveillance and signals intelligence capabilities far beyond Ukraine's independent reach. This level of integration indicates a de facto NATO involvement in strike planning that crosses traditional red lines. The precedent established here has implications far beyond Ukraine. If a nation under attack can legitimately claim the right to strike military targets anywhere within an aggressor's territory, traditional concepts of escalation control and geographic limitation become meaningless. Every conflict zone worldwide must now consider the possibility of deep strikes using readily available drone technology. More concerning for Western military planners is the demonstration that relatively simple technology, when applied innovatively, can neutralize expensive defensive systems on which NATO forces also depend. If Ukrainian drones can penetrate Russian air defenses, how effective would similar defenses be against comparable attacks? What we're witnessing represents the most significant evolution in military doctrine since the introduction of precision-guided munitions. The ability to project power deep into enemy territory using inexpensive, expendable platforms has fundamentally altered the cost-benefit calculation of warfare. Traditional military hierarchies based on expensive, complex weapons systems are being challenged by distributed, low-cost alternatives. The swarm tactics employed in this operation demonstrate how quantity can overcome quality in modern warfare. Rather than relying on a few expensive platforms, Ukraine has shown that dozens of simple drones can achieve the same strategic effect while being far more difficult to counter. This approach democratizes military power, potentially allowing smaller nations to challenge traditional military hierarchies. The coordination required for this operation indicates that Ukraine has developed or received advanced battle management systems capable of orchestrating complex, multi-domain operations. This suggests that the conflict has served as a testing ground for next-generation warfare concepts that will likely be adopted by militaries worldwide. The integration of open-source intelligence, autonomous navigation, and swarm coordination represents a convergence of technologies that was theoretically possible but never demonstrated at operational scale. The success of this operation proves that these technologies are no longer experimental. They are operationally viable and tactically dominant. The success of this operation exposes a fundamental miscalculation in Russian strategic thinking. The assumption that Ukrainian forces would remain focused on defensive operations while lacking the capability to threaten Russian homeland has proven catastrophically wrong. This miscalculation has forced a complete reassessment of Russian defensive posture and resource allocation. Russian military leadership now faces the impossible task of defending thousands of potential targets across vast distances against an enemy that has demonstrated the ability to strike anywhere within 800 kilometers of their border. This defensive requirement will drain resources from offensive operations and potentially force a fundamental change in Russian strategic objectives. The political implications within Russia are equally significant. The strikes have demonstrated that Putin's promises to protect Russian territory from Ukrainian retaliation were empty. This failure could have profound implications for domestic support for the war, particularly among Russian elites who believe their positions and assets were beyond Ukrainian reach. The need to reallocate significant defensive resources to protect the Russian homeland will force difficult choices about military priorities. Every air defense system sent to protect industrial facilities is one less system available to support offensive operations in Ukraine. This dilution of defensive resources may create vulnerabilities both at the front and in the rear. The rapid development of Ukrainian drone capabilities suggests an acceleration of technology transfer and innovation that has surprised even close observers of the conflict. The integration of Western sensor technology with Ukrainian engineering innovation has produced capabilities that exceed the sum of their parts. This collaborative approach to weapons development represents a new model for military innovation. The open-source intelligence community has played a crucial role in this development, providing targeting data and battle damage assessment that would traditionally require state-level intelligence capabilities. This democratization of intelligence gathering has enabled Ukraine to develop and refine their strike capabilities with unprecedented speed. The implications for global arms development are profound. The success of Ukrainian drone innovation demonstrates that military capability development no longer requires massive defense industrial complexes. Small teams of engineers with access to commercial components and open-source intelligence can develop systems that challenge traditional military hierarchies. The speed of Ukrainian innovation also suggests that traditional weapons development cycles, typically measured in decades, can be compressed into months when driven by necessity and unconstrained by bureaucratic processes. This acceleration has profound implications for how nations think about developing defensive capabilities. The level of intelligence demonstrated in this operation indicates that Ukraine has developed or gained access to reconnaissance capabilities that rival those of major military powers. The precise target selection, attack timing to maximize damage, and coordination across multiple sites simultaneously requires detailed, real-time intelligence that was traditionally only available to superpowers. The integration of multiple intelligence sources, satellite, electronic, human, and open source into a coherent operational picture represents a sophistication that few expected Ukraine to develop independently. This suggests both substantial capability transfer and accelerated indigenous development driven by conflict necessities. More concerning for Russia is the implication that their most sensitive facilities are being continuously monitored and assessed for vulnerability. The precision of the attack suggests not just knowledge of target locations but detailed understanding of their functions. strategic importance, and specific defensive vulnerabilities. This operation demonstrates how asymmetric warfare can achieve disproportionate strategic effects through economically efficient methods. The estimated total cost of the drones and payloads used in this operation likely does not exceed a few $1,000,000, while the damage inflicted is measured in hundreds of millions and the strategic value is incalculable. The cost-effectiveness of this approach forces a fundamental reassessment of how military resources are allocated. Traditional defense systems costing billions can be neutralized by attackers spending millions, creating an unsustainable economic equation for defensive forces. The secondary economic impact is equally significant. The need to protect thousands of potential targets will force Russia to make massive defensive investments that will drain resources from offensive capabilities. This resource redirection represents a strategic victory for Ukraine even beyond the direct damage inflicted. What happened in the early hours of this morning represents more than a successful military operation. It's the announcement of a new strategic reality that will redefine how nations think about security, defense, and power projection. Ukraine has demonstrated that the traditional concepts of strategic depth, homeland sanctuary, and defensive perimeters no longer apply in an era of distributed, low-cost strike capabilities. The precision and coordination of these strikes, penetrating 800 kilometers into Russian territory and successfully targeting critical military infrastructure, proves that Ukraine has evolved from a nation fighting for survival to a military power capable of projecting force deep into enemy territory. The destruction of facilities at Saratov, Ryazan, Engels II, and other locations sends an unmistakable message. Nowhere in Western Russia can be considered safe from Ukrainian retaliation. For military planners worldwide, this operation serves as a wake-up call about the changing nature of warfare. The age of expensive, complex weapon systems dominating the battlefield is giving way to an era where innovation, coordination, and mass deployment of simple systems can achieve strategic effects that previously required massive military investment. The war in Ukraine has become a laboratory for next-generation warfare, and today's operation demonstrates that the lessons learned there will reshape military thinking for decades to come. The question now isn't whether Ukraine can strike deep into Russian territory. It's whether Russia can adapt its defensive posture quickly enough to counter this new threat, and whether other nations can prepare for the era of conflict that this operation announces. This is Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes reporting. The strategic balance has shifted. The rules of war have been rewritten, and the implications of this morning's operations will be felt far beyond the current conflict zone. A new era of warfare has begun, and its effects will reshape global security for years to come.